Let's move on to the second talk of the day, which is variational Bayes algorithms for millimeter wave and massive MIMO OFDM systems with low resolution ADCs by Sai Subramaniam Thota. Sai Subramaniam received the BE degree in ECE from the College of Engineering Guindy Anna University in Chennai and his MTech degree in EE from the Indian Institute of Technology Madras. He worked as a chief engineer for Samsung Research India Bangalore and before joining as a project assistant at the Department of ECE in IISc. Since 2016, he is pursuing PhD at the Department of ECE in IISc. His research interests include massive MIMO communication systems, sparse signal recovery, and statistical signal processing. Welcome, Sai, and the floor is all yours.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, it's showing screen.
Yes.
Yeah, it's blank, but we can see.
Now is it okay?
Yeah, I can see the PPT.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. Shall I start?
Yes,
Okay.
you can
Okay.
start.
Yeah. Good evening, all. My talk is about variational Bayes algorithms for millimeter wave and massive MIMO OFDM systems with low resolution ADCs. My advisor is Professor Chandra R. Murthy from ECE Department, IISc Bangalore. I'll briefly go over the overview of the talk. Uh, First, I'll motivate the problems as to why we need massive and millimeter wave MIMO systems, and especially that thesis topic will be on low resolution ADCs. Why do we need low resolution ADCs? And in millimeter wave MIMO systems, what is the need for a hybrid analog digital architecture? Hybrid in the sense the number of RF chains typically are equal to number of antennas at the base station or the user equipment. But here we uh, group certain antennas and then connect them to a single RF chain, in which case we need a RF precoder or combiner at the transmitter and receiver sides for communication purpose. And we predominantly address two problems, one channel estimation and data detection problems, both in sub-6 gigahertz as well as millimeter wave frequencies. The frameworks which we have used is from statistical inference from Bayesian frameworks. Second, from minorization maximization algorithms from optimization literature, and greedy methods from compressed sensing as well as optimization. And we also adopt this framework for a pre-coding problem, especially this codebook-based pre-coding in downlink multi-user MIMO systems. The codebook means the pre-coding vectors which are selected for transmitting data for users are chosen from a specified codebook, which are known to both the transmitter and as well as the receivers. Finally, I conclude the talk. Depending on the time, I will cover uh, the problems and leave the rest of it in the interest of time. To motivate this topic, basically, the International Mobile Telephony performance targets for 2020 are basically under three verticals. One is enhanced mobile broadband, which has applications in 3D high definition videos, ultra high definition screens, as well as high speed gaming technologies, which predominantly need the massive MIMO as well as frequencies in millimeter wave spectrums to get this large bandwidths. And second vertical is massive machine type communications, which are predominantly used in sensor networks and Internet of Things or smart homes, smart cities, etc. Third vertical is ultra reliable low latency communications, where the delay between the base station and the user equipments, the round trip delay or the protocol delay are extremely crucial for specific tasks. For example, in self-driving cars or remote surgeries, we need um, very low delay between the base station and user equipment. So that is third vertical in 5G communication systems. Our work predominantly focus on this enhanced mobile broadband, where we use massive MIMO as well as millimeter wave spectrum to address these issues. This is the basic block diagram of a multi-user MIMO system. There are multiple user equipments on the left-hand side, for example, mobile stations or laptops, etc., which has single antennas which communicate to a base station shown on the right-hand side here. The medium of communication is through a wireless channel. So multiple user equipments transmit data via wireless channels to the base station. In the base station, it has multiple receive antennas. Upon receiving the RF signals, that is radio frequency signals, they basically use this RF chains to down convert the RF frequencies to baseband frequencies. So this RF chain typically contains some filters or gain controllers and low noise amplifiers, also local oscillators for converting the RF to baseband frequencies. And then we quantize the baseband signal using analog to digital converters. Finally, we use some baseband processing to decode the data, to estimate channels and decode the signals. Finally, we'll transmit the decoded signals to the higher layers of a protocol. The three important things to note here is that all these devices are power hungry devices. For example, RF chains have consume more power, especially in a massive MIMO scenario when there are hundreds of antennas and each connected to an RF chain. The power consumptions are typically going to be tremendous. To address these things, one way is to reduce the number of RF chains, but still employ more antennas. And we use a hybrid architecture to address this power consumption issue. Another way to address this power consumption issue and also the cost issues are by using low resolution ADCs. And in literature, we know from literature that the power consumptions of an ADC is exponentially proportional to the resolution of the ADC. So by employing low resolution ADCs, we have two advantages. One is the power consumed is going to be less. Also, as number of bits of the ADCs increases, the cost also increases. So by decreasing the resolution of the ADCs in the receiver side, they're going to have advantages both in the power side as well as in the cost side. But if we employ low resolution ADCs, there are advantages of power and cost, but along with this, there are also demerits, some challenges which we need to address before using it in a commercial system. One is the high nonlinear distortion due to the low resolution quantization. For example, in our case, we have used 1, 2, or 3 bits. So with 3-bit quantization or 1-bit quantization, we are going to lose extremely a lot of information about the signals. So we need to address this issues. So because of this high quantization noise, the linear receivers currently being used, for example, zero forcing or regularized zero forcing or minimum mean square error based detectors are going to perform extremely poorly. Also, in a low resolution based system, in literature, basically they assume this perfect channel state information for detection purpose, which is not impractical because even the pilot signals which are used for channel estimation will also go through this low resolution. And with this distortion at the receiver side, estimating the channels perfectly is a highly impractical task. So assuming a perfect channel state information is not a good assumption. And to reliably estimate channels with coarse quantization, we are going to need large training overhead. By large training overhead, I mean the number of pilots which we use for channel estimation are going to be much higher compared to a full resolution based system. So all these issues combined pose new challenges which we need to address before making this low resolution based systems commercially successful. And we will see some techniques to address these issues. Among these 4 problems, the first problem which we solve is massive MIMO systems with low resolution ADCs, where we use single carriers here, which means the channels between the users and the base stations undergo flat fading, which means there are no multipath reflections. There is only single path between the transmitter and receiver, which undergo, for example, a Rayleigh fading in our case. This is a basic block diagram, system model of our system, massive MIMO system with low resolution ADCs. On the left-hand side, we have transmitter. On the right-hand side, we have receiver or a base station. There are K users here with single antenna each, which encode their data. By encode, I mean channel encoding, error correction encoding. And we also modulate this encoded bits to constellation symbols, for example, QPSK or 16 QAM modulation. And then along with the data, we also embed the pilot signals which are used for channel estimation in the time frame, and then upconvert the signal to RF and transmit them over the air. So there are KUEs which do these operations and transmit the signal over the air to a base station. This is the base station here, which has NR receive antennas, and upon receiving the signal from via NR receive antennas, they don't convert the signal to baseband using RF chains. Then they digitize the signal to bits from analog domain, and then we have this baseband processing, which contains channel estimation and decoding, data detection, which runs in this block. And we also have channel decoding for basically error correction decoding, which happens for all the K users in this block. Finally, we output the data bits of each user, which can be sent to higher layers for further processing. And there also we have extrinsic information. Using the decoded bits, we can transmit the information back to the channel estimator for further performance improvement.
Hi, what is QVP SST? Can you tell?
I'll explain that algorithm in the subsequent slides. It's the channel estimation and detection algorithm which we designed basically.
Okay.
Yeah. So to summarize system model is it's like this. We have first pilot phase of tau p symbol durations. Then we have a data phase of tau d symbols. Then channel is assumed to be constant throughout this symbol duration. We call it a coherence interval. So channel is assumed to be constant within a coherence interval. So to model this mathematically, we have this received signal, quantized signal YP. YP will be of, since we have NR receive antennas, we have this YP will be of size NR cross tau p. Tau p is the length of the pilot signals, and NR is the number of receive antennas which we have at the base station. ZP is the unquantized version, which will be of same size. So all these are complex signals basically. And this H is the channel of the users in a matrix form. For example, we have H will be of the form H1 vector, H2 vector up to HK vector. So each will be of size NR cross 1. And all the K users channels are stacked in a matrix form, that is H here. And XP is the pilot signal of size K cross tau p. K is number of users and tau p is the length of the pilot of each user. So each row of this matrix, this XP matrix, contains the pilot signals for each user. And WP is the additive white Gaussian noise. Each entry of this noise is independent and identically distributed with complex normal and with zero mean and variance from sigma W square. Similar to pilot signal, we have a data received signal. Here the size will be of NR cross tau d. Tau p is for pilots and tau d is for data, which is unquantized version of the unquantized received signal ZD. ZD also will be of size same as YD. Similarly, H is constant between the pilot and data phase. And XD is what the data we transmit from the users to base station, which needs to be decoded. And WD is the complex additive white Gaussian noise at the receiver side. As I mentioned before, This low resolution ADCs, this Q is the quantizer, maybe for a 2-bit or 3-bit quantizer. It quantizes each entry of this matrix. It's not a vector matrix operator. It quantizes each entry of the matrix ZD using a known quantizer, scalar quantizer. So low resolution ADCs also have, as mentioned, they have large training overhead drawback to reliably estimate the channels. To address this, what we use, either we can increase number of pilots. Another way to address this issue is to use this data, this XT data itself, to re-estimate channel, which we call it joint channel estimation and data detection. We first obtain an initial channel estimate using pilots. XP is known to the receiver and transmitter because it's pilot signal, but XT is not known. So using initial channel estimate, we decode this data XD, and then we reuse this data XD to again re-estimate the channel along with the pilots. In this way, we can use this data as virtual pilot signals.
Is there any condition on NR and K? I mean, how NR
Typically, NR is greater than K.
Okay.
Yeah, because we need to have more antennas as than the number of users. But if we can use some structure like sparsity structure, then in that case, NR can be less than K also.
Okay.
So this is the system model basically. Our goal now is to decode data XT, estimate channel H using YP and YD. Because YP and YD are the observations, XD is what we need to infer, and H is also we need to infer. ZP and ZD are also unknown because they are the unquantized versions. Solution approach which we employ is that we use tools from statistical inference. The reason for statistical inference is that it fits perfectly for a coded communication system. In the block diagram, I have shown this encoder and channel decoder. And channel decoder typically performs well when their inputs are log likelihood ratios, or in short, we call it LLRs, instead of hard decisions like hard decoded symbols like QPSK symbols or 16-QAM symbols. So to get this distribution, to LLRs, typically we compute using posterior distributions of this decoded data. And to get this distribution of data, this tool statistical inference fits perfectly, and that is one main reason why we go for this statistical inference tool. But so we can, as I said, using computing the marginal posteriors. Posteriors are nothing but distributions which we of the data symbols which we estimate using the observations. Using posteriors, we can directly compute the log likelihood ratios in a straightforward manner. But there is a bottleneck here. Using exact inference. Exact inference means computing the exact posterior distribution of this data and channel is going to be computationally intractable, because in our case we have k into tau d number of OF symbols we need to decode. So if we have k into tau d signals to decode, the complexity of exact inference will be of size m power k tau d, where m is the size of the constellation set. For example, QPSK, it will be m equal to 4. For 16-QAM, m is 16. So even for example, k 10 users, even if tau d is equal to 1, the complexity will increase like 4 power 10, which is like 1 million basically. So it's exponential complexity with the number of users. So the exact inference is going to be extremely complicated to compute. So but is there a way out from this? Yes, we have some approximate inference tools which we can employ to compute these posteriors in polynomial time. It's exponential complexity. We can reduce it to polynomial complexity using approximate inference tools. I hope it's clear. This is clear. Before going through this approximate inference techniques, we first see a brief overview of probabilistic graphical models and statistical inference in a at least a few equations basically. What is a probabilistic graphical model? we have set of random variables and we model these random variables as nodes. For example, this is the graph we have. It has 7 random variables, x1, x2, x3, x4, x5, x6, x7. We can also have, this can be vectors or it can be also scalar, a single one random variable. So this is the graph of set of vertices and edges. The nodes are called the vertices. All the random variables are the nodes, and the edges between these random variables are the form the edges of the graph. But how do we form the edges? Depending on the dependence of these random variables on each other. For example, we show here a directed graphical model. So in this case, x4 is a random variable which depends on x2, x1, and x3, but x2 and x1 and x3 don't depend on other random variables because there is no incoming nodes to these random variables. So this, just to summarize here, this dependence modeled as edges. Examples are Bayesian networks, Markov random fields, or factor graphs. This is an example of Bayesian network. It's a directed probabilistic graphical model. And to compute the posterior distributions, one main distribution which we need is the joint probability distribution. What is joint probability distribution? It's nothing but probability of x1, x2 up to x6. We need this distribution to compute the marginal distributions of any of the random variable here. For example, x1, x6 can be observations in our case, and x2, x1, x3 can be channel or data in our wireless communication scenario. x6 and x7 can be quantized observations. Using this graphical structure, we can decompose this joint distribution as this format. Here we can see x1, x2, x3 don't depend on any other random variable, so their marginals separate out here. And x4 depends on x2, x1, and x3, so that x4 given x1, x2, and x3, and it's independent of other random variables. Similarly, for x5, it only depends on x1 and x3, so x5 given x1, x3, and given this variable x4, x6 is independent of all the other random variables here. That's how this separates out here. Similarly, given x4 and x5, x7 depends only on x4 and x5. So given x4 and x5, x7 only depends on x4 and x5 and independent of other remaining random variables. So this is one way to decompose this joint distribution, which will be useful for our approximate inference approach. Now, what is statistical inference? It's a tool to compute the posterior distributions of latent variables. For example, in the previous case, x6 and x7 are the observations and x1, x2 are the latent variables. Now, what we can do, inference is a tool to compute this distribution P of x2 given x6, x7, or P of x1 given x6 and x7. This can be our goal, one of the goals. To say in the general sense, for example, Z are the observations and X's are the latent variables. I mean, latent variables are something whose distributions we need to estimate or infer. So given these observations, we need to infer the distribution of latent variables X. That is our goal. That is called statistical inference. And to compute this distribution, we use Bayes' theorem to model this, to compute this function, like this Z given X. Z given X nothing but probability of observations given the latent variables. We call it likelihood function. And X is the prior distribution which we assume on the latent variables. Denominator term is called the partition function. And computing this partition function is extremely intractable because, for example, in our case, this X's are like constellation symbols. And if you have, say, 10 users and one data symbol duration, we saw previously that it has some 1 million complexity. So computing that many summations here, it's complex. To avoid that, we need to go for alternate tools. For example, we have approximate inference tools. There are two categories. One is stochastic tool, where we model this graph as a model inference problem as a Markov chains, and then find the stationary distribution of that Markov chain using some tools like Metropolis Hastings algorithm, etc. That is called sampling methods, called MCMC, Monte Carlo Markov chain sampling methods. Second is deterministic methods. Uh, Tools like VB. VB is called variational Bayesian inference. EP is called expectation propagation. EM is called expectation maximization. There are multiple tools to address this problem, and we actually use a tool called VB to address this channel estimation and decoding problem. So what is this tool basically? So given the for example, here I mentioned the observations Z and latent variables X. So we have n observations like n Z1 to Zn, and we have n latent variables, random vectors to be inferred. And this VBA is a tool to infer the posterior distribution. So how do we do that? I'll just go over through it briefly, and then in the interest of time. First step is to decode this model evidence. Model evidence is nothing but probability of the observations, marginal probability of the observations. And ln of this evidence we can decompose as sum of two terms. This L of Q term, and we don't know Q. Q is what we need to find out here. Now we given for a particular choice of Q, we can decompose this distribution as sum of two terms, L of Q term, given in this equation. Let's not go over the math too much, just to explain this intuitively. It's called a lower bound term. So given for example, in a 2D distribution, we have P of Z is modeled as some shape here. Now we find the Q and we find the L of Q here, which will lower bound this function, which means it will form a lower bound here to this at all the domain. This x-axis is the domain of the variables. Say x is a random variable, and what all values it can take, it's the x-axis, and y-axis is the model evidence. Now we bound this evidence by a lower bound function called the elbow. Elbow is called evidence lower bound because we lower bound the evidence. It's called evidence lower bound. And there will be other additional term which will model this gap between these two. This gap, it's a KL divergence term. KL is Kullback-Leibler divergence between. When you solve it, actually you can get this equation. This KL divergence between Q is the distribution we need to infer, and this P is what? P of X given Z, which is the posterior we need to infer. So we model this as sum of two terms. One is the lower bound term and one is KL divergence term. Our goal is to compute this Q to minimize this gap as much as possible. This gap. So what is the optimal Q to choose? That is our goal. We need to find a polynomial complexity algorithm to find this Q in polynomial time to minimize this gap as much as possible in all the places, in all the X values. That is our goal in statistical inference, in variational Bayesian inference. And if we don't impose any structure on this Q, the Q which will maximize this lower bound will be nothing but this P itself. This original P itself is the original posterior, which is again intractable to compute. To compute in an intractable manner, what we do is we impose some structure on this Q and then find the KL divergence to minimize this basically. That is mentioned here. Q is arbitrary and to be optimized. So to summarize this, we lower bound this evidence by a lower bound and then find an approximate distribution by imposing some structure on it to maximize this lower bound. By maximizing it, we minimize this KL divergence term. That is the goal of this VBI approach. To post mathematically, we impose the structure on this Q of x. Q of x is what we need to find out. So we assume that each latent variable are independent, and we find distributions Qi of xi, that is Q1, Q2 up to Qn, to minimize that KL divergence. So our goal is to find these Qis. To find the Qis, what do? We simplify this elbow. When we apply this some mathematical algebraical concepts, we can simplify the elbow as this form, which has minus KL of Qj. Qj is that some jth random variable here. We fix Qj and group everything else together and simplify elbow. It results in this form, minus KL of this form. And our goal is to maximize this L of Q. And to maximize this L of Q, this negative is there here. So we need to minimize this KL divergence term. And how do we minimize this? Since it is this KL is divergence always greater than or equal to 0. And to get 0, the one way to get 0 is to make these two are equal. And P tilde is something we know before, and Qj is what we need to compute. And this, when we solve it, it has this structure. Let's not go into math too much. We find this Qj as a function of this joint distribution at the end. This is observations, this latent variables, and our Qj depends finally on the joint distributions. And the expectations here, Ei not equal to j, is nothing but computing expectation of this whole function with respect to Q1, Q2 up to Qj minus 1, Qj plus 1 up to Qn. Okay. We compute this expectation of this joint distribution with respect to all the approximate distributions except this jth distribution. That is how we get this jth distribution. So we can see here that Qj depends in turn on Q1, Q2 up to Qn except this Qj term here. So this is not a one-shot algorithm to estimate this posteriors. It will be an iterative algorithm where we initialize these Q1s and fix one term here, compute the remaining, and for example, fix for computing Q1, we compute Q2, Q3, and then use this equation to compute Q1. Then update this Q1 here, and then find Q2, like in alternating manner, basically. That is iteration term here. Finally, it will converge to a stationary point of the original problem. Typically, what we observe is that when we have this exponential family of distributions, for example, in our case, most of the distributions are from Gaussian family. In that case, using the structure of this distribution, we can find what distribution it follows. For example, it has complex normal or something like truncated complex normal in our case, or mixture Gaussian, etc. To summarize, forgetting the math part, to summarize in the flow diagram format, we initialize the statistics of this distributions Q1 to Qn. Then we, for each j, or j varies from 1 to n, we compute the qj of xj and their statistics using VB inference, and then iterate that till some suitable criterion is satisfied for convergence, or you can also fix maximum number of iterations and then repeat it multiple times, and then finally output the posterior distributions. So this is the basic concept of EBI, and we apply this to our problem. But one crucial thing to note is that here the choice of the latent variables are important to solve the problem in a computationally tractable fashion, which we will see here. To recap the model here, YP is the received pilot model, YD is the received data model, and to compute this joint distribution, we need this joint distribution because this P tilde depends on this joint distribution. So here we can represent the model as a graphical format, as I mentioned in the previous few slides back. probabilistic graphical model. So YP and YD are the observations which are showed in shaded gray circles, and ZP and ZD are the unquantized received signal which we don't know basically. And XP is the pilots which are known to the receiver, and sigma W square is the noise variance which are known, because WP and WD are the noise whose variance is given here. XD is what we need to find out. XD and H are two latent variables which we need to estimate. In the process, we need to introduce some additional latent variables to compute the distribution of H and XD. To do that, we introduce these two variables here. That's one new contribution of our work. If we don't introduce this as two additional latent variables, we may not be able to solve it in a tractable manner. Because we can see here that our final goal is to only get H and XD. Our goal is not to get ZP and ZD. But in the process of this observing H and estimating H and XD, we introduce ZP and ZD as additional variables, which can also be used for estimating, say, for example, signal to noise ratio, which can also be fed back to the users to adapt their modulation and coding schemes, basically for link adaptation purpose. So with this structure, we can decompose this joint distribution as this form. We can see here is that given ZP, YP is independent of other variables, so only their terms separate out here. Similarly for YD given ZD, and ZP depends only on H, XP and sigma W square. That term comes here. Similarly for ZD, and finally the prior terms for H given R. R is nothing but the covariance matrix of the channels between the users and the base stations. XD is the data we need to find out here. And we have four scenarios basically. We consider four scenarios. One is perfect CSIR, that is CSIR is channel state information at the receiver, which means the knowledge of channel H here. Perfect CSIR means the receiver knows H itself. So and also unquantized case where ZD itself is known. ZD is the observation, XD is what we need to find out. Statistical CSIR and unquantized. Statistical means we know the knowledge of R here. And since it's unquantized, ZP and ZD are the observations, H and XD are what we need to infer. Similarly, for statistical CSIR and quantized observations, we don't know ZP and ZD, which are unquantized signals. We only know the quantized observations, YP and YD, and we need to infer H and XD here. And no CSIR case where we don't know the knowledge of H and R also. Even R we don't know, but we call it no CSIR case, and quantized observations. So we know YP and YD, and we need to infer H and XD. That's our goal.
So the joint probability distribution varies according to the scenarios mentioned there?
Sorry? Yeah.
So
depending on that, some of the terms will go off here.
Okay.
For example, you have
Yeah,
perfect CSIR unquantized.
The YP ZP term will go.
This will go out. This also will go. This will remain.
So,
This also will go out because we don't need pilot signal itself in the case of perfect CSIR.
correct.
Yeah, only this will remain and this will remain. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. As mentioned in the previous introduction slide for variational Bayesian inference, we impose a factorized structure. Our goal now is to estimate this posterior distribution. To do that, we impose a factorized structure, which means we assume that all these latent variables ZP, ZD, XD, and H are independent, and try to obtain it using VB inference approach. And as I mentioned before, this choice of these latent variables are crucial for analytical tractability of the algorithm. So we judiciously introduce ZP and ZD also in the graphical model to estimate this XD and H also. This is nothing but further factorization because ZP is a matrix. So we take each column of that and then further factorize it for tau p vectors as the columns of this matrix. Similarly for ZD, and XD also is a matrix of size K cross tau D. So K is number of users and tau D is the data symbol duration. Number of data symbols transmitted by each user. This factorization occurs here. And xd comma kt are the each entry of this matrix xd. Hk is the columns of the matrix H. We have k users, so k users channels separate out as separate factors. So to compute q of hk, what do we know? As I mentioned before, in short, we need to compute the expectation here. This angle brackets denote expectation operation. With respect to what distributions? With respect to distributions, all these distributions except this q of hk. That is how we compute this q of hk. We need to compute the expectation operator of this joint distribution function. And what is the distribution over which we compute the expectation? They are the distributions, all these posterior distributions, except the hkth distribution. For example, q of h1 means we need to compute expectation with respect to all this zp, zd, and xd, and also q of h2, q of h3, up to q of hk. Okay. So when we also to do that expectation format, since hk depends only on these three terms, the remaining terms will come out of the expectation as some constant terms, which we can treat as normalization factors in the final distribution. So only these three terms come into picture. So when we can expand this ln of this distribution and then group this hk term separately, and from structure of the distribution, we can deduce that it will follow a complex normal distribution with certain covariance matrix and also certain mean. Because for a complex normal, we only need two statistics, one is mean and one covariance. We can see here this covariance matrix, it depends on xd factor here, and there's an angle bracket also in this case, which means it depends on the posterior statistics of data symbols. So hk in turn depends on q of xd. So this is not, as mentioned in the flow diagram, it's not a one-shot algorithm. It needs to be run iteratively till the convergence is satisfied. Similarly, mean function hk also depends on this zp. Zp is the unquantized received signals. Zt here is the unquantized data signals. Also the channels hk prime, except this k, it depends on other distributions here. Similarly for the xd and hk. That's why it's an iterative algorithm. So if we solve it using VB approach, the final structures are as follows. The ZP is the unquantized received signal. It follows a truncated complex normal distribution. So ZD is the unquantized received signal. Its data received signal follows a truncated complex normal distribution. Similarly, for the H channel, follows a complex normal distribution, as I mentioned before. Here, XD is the data signal. It will follow the Boltzmann distribution. So Boltzmann distribution is nothing but in neural networks we have the softmax activation function. If you know this about that, so Boltzmann distribution is nothing but the softmax function. So this is also a good algorithm. Provides a good framework to implement this implement in a deep neural network also, if someone is interested. We are also exploring in that domain in our current work, how to implement this VB algorithm in a deep neural network model. So to summarize the flow diagram, these are the observations, the inputs, the quantized received signals, the covariance matrices of each user, the pilot signals, and the modulation signals, which are the QAM or QPSK, something like that. So we first compute this channel estimates. Before there will be initialization part, which I have not included here, is for saving space. So using that, we first compute channel estimates, then which has the complex normal distribution structure. Then we use this QH of H to update this Q of XD, which has this Boltzmann distribution. Then using the updated distributions, we then compute the unquantized received signals distributions, which follow this truncated complex normal. Then we again run this multiple times. For example, we fix some parameter, some constant n, and then run it multiple times. And finally, we output the distribution x of xt as well as for h.
So in the coherence time,
Yeah.
during the tau p duration, you estimate the channel and use that for the tau d data transmission.
No, we get complete signal for tau p plus tau d duration, and we use joint estimator approach. We don't estimate separately as initial phase or then data detection phase. We estimate and detect both together.
So where is that channel estimate used for that?
This is the channel estimate, right? We compute channel estimate first
Okay.
using pilot signals.
For data transmission,
Yeah,
so you are jointly estimating channel plus data.
correct.
But data detection, you need channel, right?
Yeah. That's what I compute here, no?
Okay.
I compute channel first,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
use it for detection here. Actually, it is not like separate channel estimation phase and separate detection phase. The algorithm itself, we can initialize this channel in any random manner initially here, before this.
That's what. Yeah.
Yeah. But this algorithm will converge to the original channel, even if you initialize in with any value.
Correct. Okay. Understood.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So this completes the single carrier part. Sample simulation result I have shown just for comparing with the state of the art algorithms. We have this three groups. One is this conventional minimum mean square based approach, which are very poor when you have a low resolution case. Even with unquantized case, it's poorer than our algorithm. We also have multiple cases here. One with no CSIR case, which is that red color here. I zoom it in this case. Red color shows the no CSIR case. This magenta color shows the statistical CSIR and quantized case of our algorithm. And this maroon color shows the unquantized case with statistical CSIR. And this black is the GAMP algorithm. GAMP is called Generalized Approximate Message Passing Based Algorithm, which is unquantized case, which is worse than our quantized case itself. So the advantage here is that estimating this distributions directly will result in a very tremendous performance improvement compared to conventional. It also beats the bilinear GAMP algorithm with unquantized case. And this I plotted for the perfect CSIR case. Perfect CSIR means we have knowledge of H also at the receiver. So we can see that with perfect CSIR, there is a huge gap here. So the assumption of perfect CSIR is not, it's not an ideal assumption to decode data because it severely overestimates the performance in this case. The system parameters which we have used for simulation purpose. So other contributions. In the no CSIR case, we also infer the large scale fading coefficients which can be used by the receiver for link adaptation. That is to modify the modulation and coding schemes to maintain the link up in a correct manner. And we also integrate this with a channel decoder, basically. Then we use this information from channel decoder in an iterative manner to improve the performance further. That is this data pair adaptation part. And publications wise, we have 2 conference papers and 1 journal publication in Transactions of Communications Journal in May 21 edition. This completes the single carrier part. So this completes single carrier part. Now we extend that to a MIMO OFDM part, orthogonal frequency multiplexing part, where the channel between the user and the base stations are actually not single tap channel, they are like multi-tap channels, frequency selective channels. So system model is shown here, similar to single carrier case, except that there we have a OFDM modulation at the transmitter side. So encoding and interleaving happens here for each. We have k users, and each user separately encodes their data and interleaves their data. And we have a symbol mapper which maps to a constellation symbol. MIMO encoder only happens when there are multiple antennas at the transmitter side, but here we only consider single antenna. So only mapping happens here. And we have OFDM modulator where we map the symbols to subcarriers, and then we do this inverse DFT operation, and then convert that to a serial format. And we also add cyclic prefix and upconvert using RF and transmit over there. So OFDM modulation and RF upconversion happens here. Then after transmission, the receiver receives the data of all the K users using NR receive antennas. Then they downconvert using RF chains, and then digitize using ADCs. And then finally, we have this channel estimation and soft symbol decoding. By soft symbol, I mean we estimate the posterior distribution directly instead of hard decisions. So that's why we call it as soft symbols, which we use it to compute the log likelihood ratios. Then finally, we input that log likelihood ratios to channel decoder here, de-interleaver and channel decoder. Then we finally get the output bits of each user, which can be sent to the higher layers for further processing. So system model here is that we have tau p first pilot OFDM symbols. So each symbol has CNC subcarriers basically, and tau d data OFDM symbols. And typically in a system like LTE or LTE advanced, in each OFDM symbol, they will embed pilots as well as data. For example, if I have this OFDM grid basically, and each symbol has multiple subcarriers. So in each symbol, there will be specific subcarriers for pilots. For example, 1 and if we have named as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 4 and 1 are pilot subcarriers, and 5, 3, and 2 are data subcarriers. But if you have this architecture in our case, it will result in a severe intercarrier interference. So what happens is, to avoid the intercarrier interference, we have this different architecture where we have separate pilot symbols, OFDM symbols, and separate data OFDM symbols basically. So that is this point I mentioned here. So we have separate pilot and separate data OFDM symbols. As previously seen, when we have low resolution ADCs, we need large number of pilot symbols to reliably estimate channels. So to avoid that, we have this data aided channel estimation case. Also in our frequency selective, this OFDM case, what we have is that typically this channels between users and the base stations are multi-tap channels. Out of this different multiple taps, only very few number of taps are active. Remaining will also all be zeros. So we have sparsity in delay domain in this case. So if we have sparsity in delay domain, we can use the sparse signal recovery algorithms to estimate the channel. So when we use sparse signal recovery algorithm, typically we have y equal to hx plus w, where w is the noise and x is what we need to estimate, and h is the another. Maybe I should write it here. Y equal to say xp into h plus w. Typically, number of rows of y is greater than number of rows of h basically. It's called overdetermined system. But if you use sparse signal recovery, we can estimate more values using less number of observations. So in which case, we can also reduce the training overhead, because number of observations are directly proportional to number of pilot symbols we use. So if we use sparse signal recovery algorithms, we can use less number of pilots to transmit, to estimate channels. So we use both these things in our model basically. So this is equations. Let's not go over it too much. This is the unquantized received pilot signals. It has two parts. One is channel part shown in red color, data part shown in pilots part shown in blue color. So when we use some structure of this OFDM to finally model this as a linear equations model, finally if you have vectorize this using the vectorization operator and then restructure it using this OFDM structure. For example, in this pilot matrix, it'll be a circulant matrix. So when you have a circulant structure, you can diagonalize it using a DFT operation. So that DFT matrices come here. So let me skip those math parts and then focus only on the final solution. So when you restructure and then again stack for all the pilot signals and all the pilot symbols and all the antennas, finally it will result in this model. Z equal to phi of P into H plus WP model, where phi of P is what depends on pilot signals and also some DFT operators, and H is the channel which we need to estimate. So this H will be of size, it's complex of size NR. NR is number of antennas. No, H will be of size, no, it will be of size K into L. L is the length of each user's channel tab. L, KL cross NR. NR is number of antennas at the receiver side. And you have ZP. ZP is the observations, which will be of size NR into tau P into NC cross NR. So tau P is number of pilots, NC is number of subcarriers in each pilot. Those many observations we have, and we have NR number of antennas. So we have totally tau P, NC, NR observations. And number of symbols we need to estimate are basically KL into NR. So here, if you use sparse signal recovery algorithm, this tau P into NC can be less than K into L. So this matrix will be a fat matrix. It has less number of rows and more number of columns. Also, because of the structure of this channel, this H will be joint sparse. Joint sparse means if you have this channel matrix and we have each row here, each row of the matrix, some are zero rows, some are non-zero rows. So zeros will occur in the same row index in all the columns, and non-zeros also occur in the same row index in all the columns. It is called joint sparsity structure. So we exploit this structure to estimate this channel. Finally, we quantize it using y of P is Q of ZP. This is for the pilot phase. Similarly, for data phase also, when we consider this channel and data in this case here, data is shown in blue color and channel is shown in red color here. When we do this vectorization and stacking and restructuring, we finally get this D into X of D model. Z of D is D into X of D plus WD. X of D is what we need to find out. D depends on channel. Channel is not known, but we can use this initial channel estimate to fill this matrix D and then use this D and Y of D. Y of D is quantized version. So Y of D is nothing but Q of D into X of D plus WD. WD is just the white Gaussian noise. So we know D, we know Y of D, we need to decode X of D. And we use a VB framework similar as what I used for single carrier case, we extend it for multi-carrier case here. Now I decode the signals X of D, and what I do, I find the distribution of X of D, and I take the mean of those distributions and form this big matrix. That is for data-aided channel estimation. Initially, we had ZP equal to phi of P into H plus W. That is one thing, pilot-based channel estimation. Now we decode data also. Now I stack all this decoded data and some operations to convert to compatible format and then make it a big matrix here. Now what is the advantage? Now we have more observations and less unknowns in this case. But still sparsity structure still holds in this case. So if we denote this as phi of D, so phi of P is one matrix here, phi of D is another matrix here, H is what we need to re-estimate. So it results in this format, phi into H plus W, where phi is nothing but phi of P and phi of D stacked together, and phi of D is nothing but which depends on decoded data. Now we quantize it again. So y equal to q of z. So using y phi, we need to estimate h. H also is joint, has a joint row sparse structure in this model. So in this part, our contributions basically are, we have this sparse signal recovery problem because H has a sparsity structure. So we first find the Kramer-Rao bounds. Kramer-Rao bounds is generally used for characterizing the performance of any estimator, unbiased estimator. But here we have a Bayesian estimator, which is actually biased. So we derive Bayesian Kramer-Rao lower bounds in this case. So once we derive this Bayesian Kramer-Rao lower bound, we also proposed this channel estimator and soft symbol decoder. When we integrated both and have an iterative channel estimator and soft symbol decoder, then we have this adaptation algorithm, which we use the channel decoder's output to tune the data pairs, which are input to the soft symbol detector. That is this data pair adaptation part. To just shortly mention this Bayesian Kramer-Rao lower bound, example, you have this y equal to quantized version of phi x plus w, where x is what we need to estimate. Now this Bayesian CRB is used to lower bound this mean square error of the estimator of random vector x here. To do that, since our estimator is Bayesian, we derive Bayesian Kramer-Rao lower bound. So for Bayesian bounds, we need to impose a prior on this x here. And one good prior which promotes sparsity is a complex normal prior with gamma hyper prior. What is hyper prior? Example, you have x is distributed as complex normal of, say, xi, I'll say, ith column of this x of mean 0 and some covariance precision matrix, say, I'll say gamma inverse. Covariance gamma inverse, which means precision matrix is gamma. And I impose another prior on this gamma itself. That prior is called hyper prior. We model it using gamma hyper prior on this matrix gamma. Okay, let me call it as not gamma, it will confuse. We call it as P. So I impose a complex normal prior on X with zero mean and covariance matrix P inverse. In turn, I also further impose a hyper prior on P. So when we compute this marginal prior on X by using this gamma hyper prior and complex normal prior, finally this P of X function, this prior on X, which will have a student's T prior distribution, which will have a very heavy tail distribution. So heavy tail means, example, it will form a distribution like this. Very high peak and large heavy tails here. So most of the times, if you estimate using this structure, it will estimate zeros as a solution. So since we have this sparsity also imposed, we have more number of zeros than the non-zeros in this matrix X. Having this complex normal prior and a gamma hyper prior will result in a marginalized prior as student's tree distribution, which is known to promote sparsity in the final solution. So with this prior, we can derive this Bayesian CRB. Since these columns of X are all independent of each other, this Bayesian information matrix, which will have a block diagonal structure. So it will have it's a big matrix and has a block diagonal structure, the remaining zeros in this case, because of this independence assumption. And the Lth diagonal block is what I have mentioned here. We calculate this Lth diagonal block as using this expectation operation of second derivative of this log of this joint distribution function. When we solve it, it finally comes out to be this term. Finally, there will be expectation term also which remains, because computing this in closed form is not tractable, because it's eta and all depends on this quantizer, and f is a PDF of random variable with mean 0 and variance 1. Similarly, capital F is CDF of the standard normal random variable. Computing this in closed form is complicated, so we use sampling methods to compute it in our comparison purpose to get the final lower bound. So once we compute this ML matrix, this Bayesian information matrix, we compute the inverse of that matrix and find the trace of it to finally get the lower bound, which we use to characterize our estimator basically. So to recap the system models here, the channel estimation system model, initial channel estimation, data detection model, y of d is the quantized data, x of d is what we need to infer, and then we re-estimate the channel using data-guided channel estimation base. Here also we impose a two-stage sparsity promoting prior with complex normal prior on H and gamma hyper prior on its precision matrix, and solve it using a VB algorithm. Let me not go into the math in this case. We use VB algorithm to obtain this delay domain channel estimates, also data symbols. Then we use the posterior distribution of decoded data to re-estimate channel in this data-guided channel estimation. So this has a brief overview of the algorithm. To put it in flow diagram format, this is the format. The inputs are the quantized signals and the pilot signals. X of p is the pilot signal. Then we have initial channel estimation phase. So when we use a VB algorithm, this QH of H has this complex normal structure, and Q alpha is that hyper prior. It also has a gamma distribution. Then we compute the soft symbols using the initial channel estimates, which follows this Boltzmann distribution. Then we use this data itself to re-estimate channel, and we do it multiple times. We don't do it single time. We do it multiple times, and we observe numerically that in each iteration of this algorithm, performance improves, and beyond four iterations, it saturates basically. So we only do it 4 times here. And finally output the data symbols and channel, and this alpha. This alpha is basically used to estimate the support of this channel. Support is nothing but where all zeros occur, where all non-zeros occur. That is given by this alpha distribution, alpha random variable, which follows a gamma distribution. So put it in a very elaborate format here. There is a multiple blocks in this case. I'll only give a broad description. First, this channel estimation block happens here. Then you have some restructuring to get this dictionary matrix for data decoding. Then data decoding happens here. And this block has channel decoder and deinterleave block. So here this feedback from this channel decoder back to the soft symbol detector for data prior adaptation. Then we also have feedback between this channel soft symbol detector back to channel estimator for data-guided channel estimation. This completes this block diagram explanation. A simple sample simulation result is, first we show this Bayesian CRB format. We plot it for 2 cases. One is for tau p equal to 1 case, 1 pilot OFDM symbol case. Second is 4 OFDM symbols case. We can see this, we plot both the Bayesian Kramer bound as well as VB algorithms performance here. We can see both are almost overlapping on each other, which means our algorithm meets the CRB, and which means it's also near optimal algorithm. But one thing to note is that it's a biased estimator, and our CRB also is a biased Bayesian CRB. So maybe if you have a different prior assumption, it can result in a different performance. Even the CRB in that case may change. For this prior assumption, this is the CRB, and this is the algorithm performance, which means we are reaching the optimal performance for this prior.
How is this multi-path channel is generated for MIMO OFDM simulations? I mean, any system model or how it is generated?
I actually generate the support where all non-zeros occur, and each tap follows a complex Gaussian distribution, rarely fading basically.
I mean, no system model, something like that. Just
system model is that maybe you can fix this number of taps beforehand. Just for simplicity, the number of taps are 10 taps for each user's channel. In time domain, if you plot, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 taps, and there are some zero taps, some non-zero taps. Say if you have two non-zero taps, and we generate each tap with distribution Cn of 0, 1. Complex normal with 0, 0 mean and 1 variance. Is it clear?
Yeah.
So this we generate, we fix this length of the channel here. Then the support we generate randomly, basically. It's not a fixed support every time. In every Monte Carlo simulation, I generate some, say, 2 length vector, which varies from 1 to 10. I generate 2 numbers, say here like 2 and 5. Then I generate another random distribution with at each non-zero entry with mean 0 and variance 1. I do it for all the users.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So this shows the BER performance basically. I showed the conventional algorithm, minimum mean square error based soft decoding algorithm shown here. This is for 3-bit quantization case, also unquantized case. And we use tau p equal to 8 OFDM symbols, basically because for this conventional receivers, it cannot work if they reduce the number of pilots to less than 8. That's the reason why you used 8 pilot symbols, because there are 8 users here. And I also plot for the perfect CSIR case for conventional receiver. We can see that our QVB algorithm beats the perfect CSIR case of conventional receiver. Also, it beats the unquantized bilinear GAMP algorithm also by around 1.5 dB. So estimating the soft symbols directly will improve the channel decoder's performance also. And we also have an iterative, I mean, even this also is, all these are iterative algorithms, multiple iterations it runs. But estimating soft symbols will improve performance considerably. That is the final takeaway point here of why we use this PB algorithm to get the soft symbols directly. There are one conference paper for this work and one paper submitted in July, and now it's under revision, major revision submitted in December basically. I think we are out of time. I'll skip this other parts. But this is basically deals with millimeter wave hybrid MIMO OFDM channel estimation. These are the, it's a data-driven approach where we have some data for training as well as testing data. We learn this parameters of this terrain basically using training data, and we reuse that learned parameters in testing data basically. It's part of a challenge organized by International Telecommunication Union, ITU, and North Carolina State University. And this was one of the top 3 solutions chosen. So this is the block diagram, and proposed algorithm has multiple phases in this case. Let me skip this in the interest of time. And the performance scores obtained at the end. We have published by combining the solutions of the first 3 positions, and then we got a published paper in ITU journal on AI and machine learning, published in July 2021. The last work is codebook-based precoding for multi-user MIMO broadcast systems, where I'll explain system model itself, only system model, where we choose this precoding codebook from a predefined set of dictionary. We don't choose it randomly, because in millimeter wave, for example, we have a hybrid architecture, and the phase shifts we need to choose for RF precoding, we can't choose it in a random manner because of the cost constraints of this RF components. So we need to choose a discrete phase shifts, in which case the precoders have to be chosen using from a code book. So we solve this problem in that context basically. So this is the basic system model. We have a downlink training phase. We transmit pilots from the access point or base station to the multiple users. I only have shown one user here. So first channel estimation phase, then we transmit the feedback from the users back to the base access point. Access point will solve this problem to choose the pre-coding vectors which need to be transmitted to the to the users. Also, how much power to be allocated on each pre-coding vector chosen. That is a problem which we solve under a total transmit power constraint here, and we use tools from optimization to solve this problem. It can also be used for in time division duplexing scenario where the users will transmit pilot signals back to the AP, and AP will use channel reciprocity to estimate the downlink channels, and they solve this problem to choose the pre-coding vectors. Pre-coding vector means we transmit data by multiplying that data with the pre-coding vector. For example, you have one. Yeah, any question?
So the pre-coding vector has been taken from the dictionary, or I mean codebook? You are
From the
saying?
codebook, yeah.
So codebook and dictionary are interchangeable, or what is? I mean,
Yes, it's interchangeable.
okay. So fixed codebook kind of.
Fixed codebook, yeah. So the goal is to choose the pre-coding vectors on which we need to transmit the data, and how much power we need to allocate on each pre-coding vector for all the K downlink users, because it's downlink transmission phase. So base station will transmit data to all the users at the same time. So we derive the sum rate expression, and then we use this sum rate to solve this problem basically, which means we used to solve this selection problem as well as the power allocation problem. Since this it's a highly non-convex problem, it's not easy to solve. It's also combinatorial because it's a selection problem. We need to choose vectors rather than only. It's not a continuous problem basically, and we use tools from optimization called basically this principle to convexify the function, and then we propose iterative algorithms to solve this problem. But novelty mainly comes from the choice of the functions which we use to bound the original function. That's called surrogate functions. Surrogate functions we use to bound the original function, and then the way we choose the functions and the number of times we choose the functions are the key novelty of this solution. And we propose two algorithms. One is square root algorithm and inverse MM. So just to give a basic brief overview of this principle, for example, we need to maximize this function, this non-convex function. So what we do, we need to bound this function by a concave function because it's a maximization problem. So we choose one point here, x of 0, and we find a surrogate function, a concave surrogate function here. And then we maximize this function. So then we get a new point here. Then we find another function around this new point. And then we maximize this function also. Then we get new point here. We keep repeating this till this maximum is obtained. So choice of this initial value also needs to be appropriate. But in simulations, we observed that in whatever way we initialize, it converges to a stationary point or local optimum. It's a basic principle of MM. And we have two algorithms, square root MM and inverse MM basically. We use tools from complex matrix derivatives and also complex matrix inequalities, Taylor series and some other inequalities to bound this non-convex function. And we do it multiple times and then to get the final solution. This is the expression for the final solution at the mth iterate. So we need to run it multiple iteratively till convergence. It's a one plot to show the performance of the algorithm. This is the algorithm in current state of the art, and these three are our algorithms. We run for multiple pilot SNRs. So as higher the SNR, some rate achieved will be better. We can see that the other algorithm will saturate beyond a point, but this improves beyond a point also, depending on the SNR, of course. even with 1024 sized code book, this weighted minimum mean square algorithm will perform worse than our algorithm because they don't consider this code book into consideration in the design phase. But after getting the pre-coding vectors, we quantize the vectors to the nearest vector in the code book. That's why it's not optimal approach to choose. So choosing the code book, considering the code book itself during design phase is crucial for getting the better sum rates. So we have two publications, one conference paper and one journal in TCOM 2019. To summarize, we proposed algorithms for massive MIMO flat fading channels, single carrier systems as well as multi-carrier systems, both channel estimation and soft symbol decoding algorithms. We also proposed Bayesian Kramer-Rab bounds for quantized compressed sensing. Then for the millimeter wave channel estimation, we integrated two approaches. One is the greedy algorithm for dimensionality reduction, combined with the high-performing sparse Bayesian learning for channel estimation purpose. Finally, we solved a sum rate codebook-based pre-coding problem. We proposed two algorithms in this case. Future, one can think of some data-driven approaches. For example, they can even unfold this VV algorithm in a neural network and then to get a deep neural network-based implementation. Structure sparsity is another thing we can explore because there is one structure called piecewise sparsity which we did not explore. So what is piecewise sparsity? Example, in a big sparse vector, we have channels for multiple users stacked one after the other. So of length k into L. So L is the length of channel of each user, L in multiple channels. And we only assume that the whole vector is sparse, but there is sparsity inside this subvector also. That's called piecewise sparsity. This can also be exploited to improve the performance further or even reduce the complexity of the algorithm. And finally, we can integrate with the AMP-based algorithm because AMP has no matrix inverses operations, but VB has matrix inverses. So we can replace those inverse steps using message passing steps for complexity reduction. So this completes my talk.
Sai, I had a question.
Yeah.
So, you said for millimeter wave, you are considering data-driven approaches. What exactly do you mean by data-driven? Is it deep learning approach?
Not machine learning. No, not deep learning. That's also another way to explore that option.
Okay.
Actually, it's angle of arrival and angle of departure. Details are known a priori using the data from training. So using those data, we can learn this distribution of this angle of arrival and departure, and we can use this distribution for the testing phase.
What exactly do you mean by training? I'm sorry, I did not get.
Okay. We have two data sets here. One is for training, one is for testing. By training, I mean, let me go to that. This is a system model basically. This is channel data domain sparse model. It's a geometric model basically. This AR and AT are the array steering vectors, are the receiver and transmitter, and phi L and theta L are the angle of arrival and departure. Okay, so these details are given for a specific site for us. They get this channel data from specific site, angle of arrival and departure, and give to us as training data, like received signals, channel, and pilot signals, and what is the angle of arrival and angle of departure for those corresponding data sets. Using that, we learn this phi L and theta L. Learn means not by any neural network approach. It's mostly by greedy method basically. Using greedy methods, I estimate this phi L and theta L. That's called dictionary learning phase.
Okay.
And then I tune this dictionary basically using that original data set given for training. And I use that dictionary learned for testing phase.
So basically, you mean like this pilot, like could you say that the pilot angle of arrival and angle of departure are given and then you estimate, is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, it's not given directly. They only give this received signals and the pilot signals, channels basically. Channel is what? H of k is the kth subcarrier's channel.
Yes.
And this is the RF combiners. This is the baseband RF precoder. These are the pilot signals. They give H of k.
Okay.
So using that, we need to form this sparsifying dictionary. And the way we form this sparsifying dictionary will depend on the angle of departure and arrival distribution given the training dataset.
Okay.
Maybe I can share the code if you want.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's not a conventional learning approach. It's mostly to do with some greedy search and then exploiting the parameters from this dataset using this greedy search approach.
Okay. Okay.
No machine learning as such. Yeah. So this completes my talk. So I think it's way over time. So sorry for that, but anyway, thanks for attending.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, so there does not seem to be any questions.
Okay, yeah, only four are there. So I think
Yeah, the talk was very detailed and the
Yeah.
mathematical approach, it was great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sai, for such an interesting talk. Please
Yeah.
accept this as on behalf of IEEE, ISC Comsoc and SPS chapters.
Okay, thank you.
We wish you all the very best in your future.
Thanks. Thank you.